Okay, so get this right. A poisoned pastry bringing down like an entire empire. Sounds crazy, right? So like something out of a spy movie or something.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of thing, the kind of drama we're looking at today, going all the way back to the 17th century, to the court of King James I.
Right.
Or we're going to unpack this scandal, this crazy scandal called the Overbury affair.
The Overbury affair. It's a really fascinating case. I think what's really interesting about it is how it sort of exposes, all these anxieties and power struggles that are going on in early Stuart England. And we're not just talking about, some average murder mystery here.
Right.
This is about ambition and betrayal,
Yeah.
and the nature of power itself in a society that's grappling with all this religious and political change.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you've got King James I,
Yeah.
right? A Scottish king ruling over a very Protestant England.
Right.
And then you've got this guy, Thomas Overbury,
Yeah.
this sharp, ambitious poet and lawyer who gets tangled up in this really dangerous game of courtly politics.
Well, Overbury, he gets really involved with Robert Carr, who, as you may recall, was the king's favorite.
Right.
And Carr kind of rose to prominence, from really humble beginnings. Overbury acted as his advisor, and he even ghost wrote love letters for him.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, that'll give you a sense of, how close these two were.
Yeah.
But this alliance, I mean, it really catapults Overbury into a position of real influence.
Right.
But as we'll see, it also put him, directly in harm's way.
It's like keep your friends close, but your enemies closer, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, it seems like the line between friend and enemy is it gets really blurry.
Oh, absolutely. And then you have Frances Howard, the Countess of Essex. She's ambitious, she's beautiful, and she sets her sights on Robert Carr.
Okay.
Overbury sees this relationship as a real threat.
Sure.
Personally and politically. He feels like Carr is being manipulated. And he tries to warn him off.
Okay.
But his methods backfire.
Yeah.
He insults Frances publicly.
I don't think insulting the woman that your best friend is in love with is ever a good strategy.
No, not at all. It was a fatal miscalculation. Overbury ends up, imprisoned in the Tower of London,
Right.
officially for defying the king.
Okay.
But the timing, I mean, don't you think it's a little bit suspicious?
Oh, it's very suspicious. I mean, especially given his, very public feud with the Countess. So is this where, like, the poison pastries come in?
Exactly. So while Overbury is, stuck in the tower, the Countess, I mean, she's driven by this resentment and this fear, and she starts to hatch this plot to silence him for good, permanently.
Oh, wow.
And so she enlists the help of some shady characters, including Anne Turner. She was a widow with connections to poison suppliers.
This is so interesting. We're talking about like a whole network. A whole network of people involved in this plot. Sending him poisoned gifts in the tower, like tarts, jellies.
Oh, yeah, all sorts of things.
I mean, it sounds like something out of, like a Shakespeare play or something.
And it gets even more chilling. I mean, they even tried to disguise a poisoned enema as medical treatment.
Wow, that's taking it to a whole new level.
Yeah.
I mean, they were really determined to silence this guy no matter what.
It really speaks to the stakes, how high the stakes were.
Yeah.
And the lengths that they were willing to go to get rid of someone that they saw as a threat. And you have to remember, this is the 17th century.
Right.
These power dynamics were really dangerous, especially, at court.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got this, very elaborate poisoning plot happening in the Tower of London. You'd think that, I mean, this would be huge news.
Right.
Like the scandal of the century.
Right.
But here's the thing. Overbury's death, it doesn't cause any kind of public outcry. Not right away.
That's right. For almost 2 years, the case goes cold. I mean, this is the 17th century.
Right.
News traveled slowly.
Right.
And those in power, including the king, they really wanted to control the narrative.
So what happens? How does this, scandal that seemingly everyone's forgotten about suddenly explode into this huge crisis?
Well, it really boils down to a power struggle.
Okay.
A new favorite emerges, a new royal favorite, George Villiers.
Okay.
And he challenges Carr's, dominance at court.
Right.
And Carr's enemies, they see an opportunity here to use this shift in power, to their advantage.
Because it's not even really about, like, the poisoned poet anymore, right?
Right.
It's about political maneuvering. shifting alliances,
hmm
and the cutthroat world of, of courtly ambition.
Exactly. So with Carr's influence waning,
Right.
these rumors about Overbury's death, they resurface. And what was, once just whispers becomes this like roar that's impossible to ignore.
Yeah.
And the king, he senses a threat to his own authority.
Right.
And he's forced to act. He orders this full investigation.
So the scandal breaks wide open.
Yes.
The investigation begins.
Yeah.
What happens next? Where do we go from here?
Well, the investigation into Overbury's death, it was like opening Pandora's box. I mean, it just revealed this tangled web of, intrigue and secrets, and it just extended so far beyond that initial poisoning plot. And it really became a focal point, this whole case, for all sorts of anxieties that were kind of simmering under the surface of English society.
Okay, so we've got this murder mystery, right? We've got the courtly intrigue. And now we've got this idea of like these deeper social anxieties, coming to the surface. What were some of the key interpretations or, the narratives that kind of emerged from the scandal?
Well, one of the really dominant themes was this anxiety about ambitious men. And Robert Carr, I mean, he really became the poster child for this. He was this low-born Scotsman, and he climbed the social ladder through his, connection with the king. And this rapid rise to power, I mean, it really fueled these anxieties about social mobility and the threat that it posed to, to the established order.
So it's like Carr's story becomes this cautionary tale almost.
Right.
About the dangers of ambition, right? And like the corrupting influence of power. It's almost like people were looking at him and being like, see? Look what happens when you let these, these upstarts get too close to the king.
Exactly. It tapped into these existing fears about the instability of the social hierarchy. But it wasn't just about, male ambition. The scandal also really exposed these deep-seated anxieties about female power. And Frances Howard, the Countess of Essex, well, she became the scapegoat for all that.
It's really interesting how one event like can become this kind of mirror, right? Reflecting all these different social anxieties. So how did the scandal like shape the public perception of Frances Howard?
Well, she was portrayed as this ultimate femme fatale, this manipulative, lustful woman who just used her beauty and her, her cunning to get what she wanted.
Right.
And they even accused her of witchcraft.
Oh, wow.
Really drawing on these centuries-old fears about women wielding this kind of dangerous, supernatural power.
So they weren't just saying that she's, ambitious or ruthless. They were really tapping into this really primal fear of female power.
Right.
Something like really dark and really dangerous.
Exactly. The scandal played into these existing misogynistic tropes. Portraying Frances as this threat to male authority and the whole social order, and it's a good reminder of how often women in positions of power, especially those who challenge the status quo, are they're demonized and they're portrayed as dangerous.
It's like they couldn't accept the idea that a woman could, orchestrate this whole plot.
Yeah.
So they had to like frame it in terms of, witchcraft, these like almost supernatural powers of seduction and stuff.
Exactly. But what's even more intriguing is how the Overbury affair raised all these questions about the king himself.
Oh, right.
I mean, if these individuals were so corrupt and so dangerous, what did that say about the king who put them in these positions of power in the first place?
Right. So the scandal becomes this kind of like referendum on King James, like on his judgment, his fitness to rule.
Yeah.
People were like, well, if these are the people that he trusts, like, what does that say about him?
Exactly. The scandal, despite all the efforts to, control how people viewed it, it really exposed the vulnerabilities of the monarchy. And it really started to chip away at the king's authority. And remember those rumors about the Catholic conspiracies that we talked about?
Yeah.
Well, those added a whole other layer of complexity to the political fallout.
Right. Because this was a time of, huge religious tension in England. You've got this Protestant king ruling over a country that's still really, haunted by the specter of Catholic plots.
Yeah.
So how did these anxieties about Catholicism, how did they play into the whole Overbury affair?
Well, some people actually believe that Overbury's death was part of this like larger Catholic plot
Hmm.
to, to destabilize the monarchy, maybe even to assassinate the king and his family. And some people even went as far as to link the poisoning to the gunpowder plot
Oh, wow.
of 1605.
Hmm.
That foiled attempt by Catholic conspirators to blow up Parliament. I mean, one judge even used the term powder poison during the trial.
Powder poison.
Yeah.
Wow. So this isn't just some like regular murder case anymore.
Mhm.
It's become this focal point for all these fears about, religious aversion and violence.
Mm-hmm.
And that term powder poison, it's so evocative. It's like it really conjures up these images of, gunpowder and treason and this hidden threat lurking beneath the surface of society.
Right. And it was incredibly potent language,
Yeah.
intentionally chosen to really stoke those anxieties. And it played on these existing fears of Catholic infiltration and the threat that they pose to Protestant England.
So it's like the scandal almost became this canvas, right?
Mhm.
Onto which people projected their deepest fears,
Right.
right? About the monarchy, about ambition,
Right.
female power, religious conflict. It's amazing how a single event can be so, like, symbolic,
Right.
So freighted with meaning.
It's a reminder that history is never just about, events. It's about how those events are interpreted,
Yeah.
how they become entangled with these existing social and political anxieties, and how they really, shape our understanding of the world around us.
It's fascinating to me how this scandal kind of like spirals outward, right?
Yeah.
Touching on all these broader anxieties about power, gender, religion. So with all these layers of intrigue, right,
Yeah.
and social commentary, how did the Overbury affair ultimately play out?
Well, the trials began, and as you might expect in this climate of, fear and suspicion, things didn't go so well for everyone involved.
Okay, so let's talk about the trials and the fallout, right? Who faced justice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what were the consequences? Okay, so we've got this like powder keg of a scandal, right? All these simmering social anxieties. And now the trials are starting. I mean, the atmosphere in the courtroom must have been electric.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the trials of everyone involved in the Overbury affair. I mean, they became this huge public spectacle. People, they wanted answers. They wanted to see justice. But you have to remember, this wasn't just about punishing the guilty.
Right.
It was about like sending a message, reasserting order in a world that felt like it was like spinning out of control.
Yeah, I mean, because this wasn't just some, random crime.
Right.
The Overbury affair had become this symbol, right?
Right.
Of everything that people were afraid of when it came to the court. The powerful and even, like the changing social and religious landscape of England.
Exactly. And the trials themselves, I mean, they really reflected all of those anxieties. So the lower ranking people who were involved in the poisoning plot, the ones who actually, did the dirty work, well, they were made examples of.
So the little fish, they get caught in the net.
Mm-hmm.
But the big fish, they swim free. Is that what we're saying here?
I mean, yeah, it's a tale as old as time, right? So you've got Richard Weston. He was Overbury's keeper in the tower. The apothecaries who supplied the poisons. Even Anne Turner, the Countess's accomplice. They were all tried. And they were all executed. And their punishments were swift. They were brutal. And I think they were really designed to scare anyone else who might, even think about challenging the established order.
It's interesting, right? Their punishments, they kind of serve like a dual purpose. I mean, it was about retribution, of course.
Right.
But it was also about reinforcing like the social hierarchy.
Right.
By punishing those lower down on the ladder so harshly. It was like they were sending this message.
Yeah.
About who really held the power.
Exactly. But the fates of the Countess and Robert Carr, the supposed masterminds behind it all, well, their stories were a little bit more complicated. I mean, they were both found guilty.
Right.
But they ended up receiving royal pardon.
Wait. Pardons? After everything that had happened, after all the public outcry and everything, that seems, I don't know, a little inconsistent, I guess.
It definitely raised some eyebrows. To a lot of people, I mean, it just reeked of hypocrisy, preferential treatment. And it really reinforced the idea that there were, two systems of justice.
Right.
One for the powerful.
Right.
And one for everyone else.
It's like the scandal just like ripped the mask off, right? Exposed the cracks in the facade of the monarchy. revealing this system that seemed more concerned with, protecting its own than actually, ensuring justice for everyone.
And this perceived injustice, it just fueled, more public anger,
Hmm.
more distrust toward the monarchy. The pardons just became the symbol of everything that was wrong with the court.
Yeah.
And they further eroded the king's authority. And I think they contributed to this growing unrest.
Right.
That ultimately led to the English Civil War.
Wow. It's incredible to me how this case, which started with, one murder, just like spirals outward,
Yeah.
exposing these fault lines in society, and then like ultimately contributes to this huge like political upheaval.
That's the power of scandal, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it acts like this catalyst. It brings these simmering tensions to the surface, and it really reveals like the true nature of power dynamics.
Yeah.
Within a society.
Absolutely. It makes you think, Well, what stories are we telling ourselves today?
Yeah.
One that might seem like isolated incidents,
Mm-hmm.
but they actually reflect, these deeper anxieties,
Right.
these fault lines within our own society.
That's a really good question. It's something to think about. And I think, on that note, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the Overbury affair.
It's been a fascinating journey, that's for sure, through
Yeah.
the dark heart of the 17th century English court.
Mm.
We saw how a single murder,
Right.
fueled by ambition and betrayal, could just explode into this scandal.
Oh.
That really exposed the vulnerabilities of the monarchy and reflected, the anxieties of a whole nation.
Yeah. The Overbury affair, it's this reminder that history is never just about dates and names.
Yeah.
It's about the stories that we tell ourselves about the past, the lessons that we learn from those stories, and how they continue to shape, how we see the present.
Well said. And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the Overbury affair. Remember, the past is never really past. It's echoes.
Mm-hmm.
They reverberate through time, shaping our world in ways that we may not even realize. So until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning,
Yeah.
and keep diving deep into the mysteries of history.